right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I just want to welcome you to our faculty talks, which is an exploration of PhD doctoral pathways. And on behalf of the Research Institute, we're putting this on every year. We hold some faculty talks. Next month, we'll also be having another event, but this month, we are excited to hear from, okay, I'll say five, but six, including me, alumni from the LMU art therapy program who have gone on and received their PhD programs. Actually, we're not all alumni from the program, but we all have our doctoral degrees. And also, we want this to be an interactive discussion. This not only will we be hearing from the panelists, but we also want to open it up for a discussion about the possibilities of a doctoral program at LMU. So we are currently investigating that. And I'll introduce Dr. Jackson, who will be not only part of the panel, but just to talk a little bit about this grant that we received.
Sure. Thank you, Joyce. And hello, everyone. Some of the faces, I'm so happy to see some of you. It's been so long. It's so great to see those of you who have gone on in the world and done some great things and are doing great things to join us here tonight, as well as some of our professors and alumni, other alumni. So, and our current students. Yes, we had put in a proposal with the university. The university is exploring and looking to expand doctoral programs on the campus. And so they offered a grant for different entities on campus who were interested in looking into exploring doctoral programs. And so in collaboration with our associate dean and our chair of our counseling program, we together put together a grant with all of our departments and entities to explore to explore a collaborative integrated doctoral pathway for both our art therapy students and our counseling students. And our grant got approved. And so in that excitement, we're now exploring what it would look like if we were to take on a doctoral program that was shared between us and the counseling department, or even connecting with other departments in the university as a way to give our students a next level of training and research, as well as being able to stay within the LMU program and use some of your master's degree credits and classes towards a PhD program. So right now we're just exploring. So we haven't said, yes, we're going to do it. What we're doing is saying, well, if we were going to do it, what would it look like? Right? And what would be some of the ramifications around licensing and placements and where it would be housed, what professors would be teaching, all of those questions that we have to answer first before we can say, yes, we're going to do it. So we're really excited. And part of the exploratory process is we're going to be surveying all of you and other alumni to see your interest in this integrative kind of interdisciplinary degree, advanced degree here at LMU. Because of course, the more it's supported, then the more we are inclined to think that it's needed and we'll advance and move forward with it. So I'm glad that you guys are all here today. And thank you so much, Joyce.
This is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin all the panelists. And you will see them. All right, here we go. Okay, so here we have our wonderful panelists, and thank you for that introduction, Dr. Jackson. As we hear from the panelists, I invite the audience to think about questions you have as we explore this possibility for a doctoral program integrating art therapy and maybe another discipline. What are you looking for? What would be the career pathway? What do you hope to do with a doctoral degree? You can hear from the panelists about why they pursued a doctoral degree, some of their research interests, and then we'll have a dialogue at the end. So to start, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. Well, before that, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Joyce Green, and I am an alumni of the program at LMU. And I also received my Ph.D. in international psychology at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and that was an online hybrid program. I conducted my research in Rwanda, and I examined socialization goals of infant caregivers. Okay, and go ahead, Louvenia.
Hello, I'm Dr. Louvenia Jackson, and I am an associate professor in the chair of the department here at Loyola Marymount University's Marital and Family Therapy with specialization in art therapy program. And I am the one on this panel that's not an alumni. I come from Notre Dame du Namur, well, formerly known Notre Dame du Namur, which is now Dominican College or Dominican University in Northern California. And I did my doctoral degree program there. And I'll share more about that pathway later.
Darcy Lubbers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Darcy Lubbers, and I'm from the very first graduating class at LMU. And when I will say that when I graduated, I really wanted to have a doctoral program to go to. So I fully support this idea of bringing one in now. And I know we're going to talk more about our pathways. I graduated also from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in clinical psychology with a specialization in somatic psychology. And that was fairly recently. I did that PhD 30 years after being in practice with my master's from LMU. And so I'm currently in private practice and in Santa Monica, and I'm also a consultant for a treatment center in Mar Vista as well.
Great. Thank you, Darcy. Jessica Bianchi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Jessica Bianchi, and I am a assistant professor in the LMU Art Therapy Marital Family Therapy Department. I'm also the director of the Helen B. Landgarden Art Therapy Clinic. I'm an alum. I graduated in 2008. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Spent some time in community mental health, and then went back to Loyola to get my doctorate in educational leadership and social justice.
Great. Dr. Maru Serrichio-Joiner.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Maru, and similarly to a few of you, LMU alum and the Chicago School of Professional Psychology alum. So there's a theme there. I went back to get my doctorate after about 10 years after getting my master's degree in international psychology. And, oh, sorry. I just got disconnected for a second. International psychology, the same as Dr. Green. And I research bereavement support in the workplace, specifically in the Mexican culture. And I'm sure I'll share a lot more as we continue, but happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'm really happy to have joined with us Eva Wang, who is a recent grad of the program. She is starting a doctoral program. So I thought it would be wonderful to have a recent grad experience and share about her rationale for enrolling in a PhD program. So Eva, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with all my former professors. Hi. So I graduated from LMU in 2021, and currently I'm pursuing a doctoral degree in clinical psychology at Palo Alto University with an emphasis in diversity and community mental health. And I'm interested primarily with working with children and adolescent clients within marginalized communities. I'm also part of the Innovation and Gaming Lab and really passionate about understanding kind of the intersections between technology and mental health, specifically how we can improve the delivery of mental health treatments and assessment with younger populations.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. So first question, and I'm going to put it also in the chat so everybody has it. Let me see. Okay. So the first question, what was your reason for pursuing a doctoral degree? And how did the time between your master's and doctorate inform that decision? Who would like to start?
I'll go ahead because then I'm gonna actually go fan. I need to find something to fan myself. Really, I'm pregnant, everyone. So I'm like, I started to sweat. So I'll go and then I'm just gonna go get my fan and come back. Okay. So what was my reason for pursuing? So first, I would say was my interest in teaching. I had no clue when I graduated the program in 2009 that I would be really interested in becoming a professor. And then I ended up actually, oh, thank you. Wife's degree. Even better, assistant. So I ended up actually talking to Dr. Green, talking to our old department chair, Dr. Metzel, and just a bunch of people that had pursued a doctoral degree and just starting to inform myself of, you know, PsyD, ED, PhD, all the, you know, so, and I think the reason I ended up with a PhD was because of my interest in research and my interest in wanting to become a full-time professor one day. And so I knew I would need that most likely in order to be able to actually, get to that goal. And so that was my reason. And it was 10 years after graduating. And so I had a lot of time to like really figure out if that is really what I wanted. It took me a bit because, yeah, part of me didn't really want to go back to school. But then I kept finding myself back in the, you know, in the academic world. So I had at that point taught in very different universities and schools and community colleges. And so I think that at the end of the day was the reason I pursued my degree, was because I knew I needed that to advance my career path.
Okay. So teaching, wanting to do some research and pursue higher ed, right? Teaching.
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else?
I can go. So I graduated in 2008, and then right away I went to work at Aviva Family and Children's Services. It's a community mental health agency, and I worked in their adolescent group home, and I was very excited to do so. I was there for about 3 years, and it started to get very hard. I mean, it was always very hard, but it began to get increasingly hard because the population that I was working with, I feel pretty safe in making the assumption that all had experienced some sort of trauma. And it kind of felt like at times I was in a boat just kind of bailing out water. I felt very I wanted to pursue an education or learn more about how I could offer more preventative care. I felt like I was working with intervention, and I really wanted to learn about, these very kind of broken systems, how I could help youth before things got really, really bad, how I could maybe give them skills to not necessarily, you know, realistically, we can't like change everything, but maybe we could give them skills to help them deal with the trauma that they were enduring. So that was a big reason. I think too, also, I realized in the position that I was in, I was an adjunct therapist. And I didn't, although I was, very well liked in my agency, I didn't really see myself advancing anywhere. I think that I needed to have more skills and more experience with research as a way to make my voice heard. So that was another big reason. And a last kind of funny reason, it's just kind of funny. My husband at the time was touring all over the world. He was a musician. And so I was kind of lonely and I needed something to do. But that's just a funny thing.
Bored him. Yeah, I thought, I'll get a doctoral degree because I'm bored.
Yeah.
Right, Jessica. Okay. Who else? Darcy?
Sure. Yeah, well, going back to graduating in the early 80s, when I graduated, my first position, which actually I got a call from Helen Landgarten saying, hey, do you want to check out this position? It was at a psychiatric hospital in Calabasas, and the position was to help to create an eating disorders program. And at that time, that was when eating disorders became part of the DSM, and before that had not been treated as a mental health issue. So I felt really lucky that I could design into that program lots and lots of art therapy. And within that process, one of the things I became very interested in was a body mapping protocol, just really working with, it was primarily women at that time, with body distortion, with looking at what they were holding in their bodies, with trauma. And it was such a powerful methodology with them that I kind of stayed with that with different populations, of looking at body mapping in different ways, in different ways of using it. And that was kind of a thread through the years. I was very interested in the mind-body connection. I became very interested in neuroscience. I became very interested in the broadening sort of arena of all the myriad ways of working with trauma. And I did early on look at graduate programs that I found. I found at a certain point there was a program that developed at Pacifica in Santa Barbara, and another one at Santa Barbara Graduate Institute in Santa Barbara as well. And I actually, checked in with both of those institutions and was told that in order to do a PhD with either of them, I would have to repeat my master's degree with them. And so that was a significant challenge. That was not something, I felt like I had a really great master's degree education. And so I set that aside for a while, and I just continued to study on my own a lot of different mind-body modalities. And I had a continuing education business where I was providing continuing education for therapists and also for nurses at the time. And I was very interested in teaching, and always have been, also interested in writing. and interested in research. So there came a point in time where I wanted to do some writing about all the different ways I had been working with the body mapping process with different populations. And I thought, you know, I'd really like to get very, very current in all the different aspects of this, including neuroscience, including somatic psychology. And so that's when I went back again, and I checked in again with those two institutions, Pacifica and the Santa Barbara Graduate Institute. Santa Barbara Graduate Institute had two possible specialties. One was somatic psychology, and the other was pre and perinatal psychology. And what they at that time told me, Pacifica still required people to repeat their masters, but the SBGI said we have a new policy now where we've denested our masters from our PhD. So your masters will actually count towards your PhD. And so that's where I enrolled originally. And at a certain point, SBGI got bought out by the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in LA. And so that's how I ended up graduating there. They brought over our whole department at that time. And
So it
so
sounds like, Darcy, that you really wanted to hone in on a specialization. You were looking towards innovation, and really wanting to focus on current ideas. Yeah.
yes, I'm wanting to update those
Sorry, I'm going
ideas.
to move on to Louvenia and Eva, because we have not a whole lot of time for questions. Yeah. So Louvenia.
Yeah, I graduated with my master's in 2004, and I went into practicing right away, soon after graduating, and was practicing in community mental health, and then for the county of San Mateo, and I was in the county practicing as a creative art therapist for quite some time, and was realizing I was getting really good at becoming a really good clinician and art therapist. And I was learning lots of skills and growing in a lot of ways. But I always wanted to earn my advanced degree. And I really was looking around for a psychology degree that had a community kind of cultural component to it. And I couldn't really find any that really spoke to what I was interested in, which was looking at culture within the psychiatric practice. And so I was talking with some of my previous professors, one in particular, who was in the process of designing an art therapy doctoral program at my former university, Notre Dame. And I just kept kind of stalking him, Dr. Richard Carolyn, because I knew this program was coming down the pipeline and I wanted in, because I realized that that was what I was looking for. It wasn't necessarily a psychology degree, but I wanted to go back and get an advanced art therapy degree. Because what I realized was I was learning and becoming a great practitioner, but I really wasn't all that informed about what I was practicing. Because when you're in your master's degree program, the job, right, is all about training you to go out into the field and practice, but it's not necessarily about giving you that deep investigation that comes from research to be able to understand what you're practicing. And so I wanted that further elevation. I was hungry for that because I was becoming almost a little what I'm thinking of, kind of disenchanted by being a clinician and only a clinician. And so the program got off the ground, it got started, and Dr. Carolyn reached out to me and said he would like me to be one of the first cohort members. And I was truly excited because this was one of the first programs that was solely an art therapy doctorate degree. And you couldn't find that anywhere in the US because most of the programs were housed under nursing or education or art, and had specializations in art therapy, but not solely training in art therapy and research only in art therapy. And so I felt so privileged and honored, and jumped in right away. So it was I started in that program in 2013. So it was about 11 years later after I got my master's. And I'm glad that I took that time, because that 11 years helped me to prepare for my doctoral program. I don't think I would have been as successful if I would have done it straight out of my master's degree. I think I needed to understand what practicing as an art therapist meant and experience that before I was able to go into researching it and learning more about the practice itself. And so that was my pathway.
Yeah, I think many of us waited some time, right, to be in the field before pursuing a doctorate. And according to the American Art Therapy Association website, there's only 5 listed PhD art therapy programs, right? One in Dominican, Leslie, Florida State, Adler, and Drexel. Those are the art therapy specific PhDs. Yeah. Eva, what made you decide to join or to apply for your doctorate program?
So I think the education at LMU not only really like provided me a very solid training experience in clinical work, but it also made me very curious about a lot of things. So I only had a year between the time I graduated from LMU and when I started my current education. And I totally agree with what Dr. Jackson was saying. 1 year was not enough. Take your time. So during that year, I was in a full-time position as a school-based clinician at a non-public school. Thank you, Kathleen, for putting in me that practicum placement. That year kind of really reaffirmed my interest in working with child and adolescent populations and wanting to gain more experience in specifically evidence-based ways to kind of engage younger clients in ways that are culturally, clinically, and developmentally appropriate. In that year, I also saw how clinicians working in that school-based or community mental health settings can sometimes be really burned out and a little times removed from the population they really seek to serve. So I find myself kind of beginning to reflect on this question of how I can better serve the needs of students from underserved communities with marginalized identities, when a lot of the models and theories within the field were built on Eurocentric perspectives. And so I became really interested in wanting to not only learn more about cultural adaptations of evidence-based therapy, but also to kind of contribute to research that does that.
That's
That's
great.
a short, yeah.
Yeah. And Eva, I think similarly that was my impetus too. There was so much discussion in the mental health field about culture and cultural sensitivity and ways to work with diverse populations, but I felt like it wasn't really culturally appropriate, a lot of
Yeah,
approaches. So
yeah.
that's why I went back and got my doctorate in international psychology. All right. Thank you, everyone, for these wonderful introductions. And I really want a lot of time for the everybody to ask questions. And so you've already heard from all of us about our rationale for why we chose the different doctoral programs and pathways, some because of innovation, some wanted to focus on research, some wanted to teach, some wanted to be preventive versus in the we're too focused on the clinical at that moment. So let's open it up to everyone. Let's see, how do I do this? Yeah, everyone. Does anybody have any questions or curiosities for the panelists? Feel free to use your reactions to raise your hand. I think I saw Vivian.
Oh, hi everyone. Yeah, I had a general question more than a question for the panelists, so maybe I should wait a little bit.
No, please. Yeah.
So my question is, I think Dr. Jackson mentioned that the program you're thinking of would be an integrated program. And I wanted to get a little more information about that. Like, it seemed like there would be other departments involved. Did I misinterpret that?
No, not at all, Vivian. You
Okay.
correct. And that meaning that the program wouldn't solely be housed in the MFT AT program, and it would not solely have a focus on art therapy. It would be a program that would be shared with another discipline. And right now we're working with the counseling department in the School of Education. And so the coursework there would be some places where the coursework would not overlap, right? Where there would be specific courses that are designed specifically towards and geared towards art therapy. But then there would be other classes that could cross over between different disciplines. And so there would be some integrative classroom experiences and students. And this is something, again, we're still exploring. So I can't tell you exactly how it would look because we're still trying to figure that piece out. But we do know that it's going to be a program where there will be opportunities to specialize in one area or another, but you would have this at times crossover of experience and classroom learning.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, and that would also allow for, we're thinking about ways where if we were collaborating with other departments on campus, that maybe if you had an interest, like Darcy was talking about somatic, that if the yoga department had a class that was part of this, that maybe you could take a class there as part of your learning experience if you were wanting to focus more on mind and body and art therapy. Or if one of the counseling students wanted to have an experience in art therapy, take one of the courses that are more designed and geared towards art therapy practice.
Yeah, and I think that interdisciplinary approach, especially integrating art therapy or with a discipline like with a clinical pathway, right? Just like our master's program, it's an art therapy with marriage and family therapy, a doctoral program with a PsyD, I think as Eva's program is a PsyD program. Maru and mine, and I think Darcy's right, ours is not clinical. It's more research based but with a specialization in some sort of psychology.
Mine is actually clinical as well.
It is clinical. Okay. Right. And then Jessica's, yours is education, doctoral in education, which is, could you clarify what?
It's considered more application than philosophy and research. So it's, I mean, I can talk about that, I think, in our next couple questions about why I chose that specific program, but it's more about application.
Great. Yeah. And then Louvenia, the one that you went to is strictly art therapy, right? So
Correct.
going deeper in art therapy practice and theory.
And research.
And research, yes.
Because
all doctoral programs have a strong research component. Even Jessica, yours, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions? I think Heather, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was curious about with the doctoral programs, just the difference between them, kind of how they're structured, like what LMU thinks it will offer as a doctoral program. Like, would it be a PsyD or would it be in, like how it would be categorized? And then I don't know a ton about, I mean, I don't expect you guys to give me on all like, all the information about doctoral programs, but just kind of how they're structured. Like you take classes, you do research, but like how does that play out and how long does it usually take? Like how many years if you're full-time?
Yeah, and I think we're in the exploratory phase in thinking about this, right? And that's also part of the reason why we've gathered all of you here today to get your feedback on what makes sense for all of you. What do you think would be beneficial for you in your career pathway and your interests? So I guess I'm putting it back to the group. Nadia.
Actually, when I was listening, particularly to you, Dr. Darcy, when you mentioned that there are programs that take the masters in consideration, and then there's those that don't. So what does that mean? That's a different, because I think Dr. Jackson also mentioned that. Of like, so is there like a time difference if the masters is taking into account? Does that mean it's less of a time, or how does that work?
Well, so in my case, when I had called and checked into the programs where I would need to repeat the master's, it would take that much more time. So it would be 2 or 3 years for the master's and then another couple of years for the PhD. And so once I was able to go to literally it would be repeating the courses, but with their professors, right? So when I was able to go through a program that had de-nested the master's, it meant that my transcript was taken as it was from LMU, and I could begin right away on the PhD coursework, which in my case was about 3 years plus research.
And there's differences, Nadia, with the different programs, and I think this answers kind of Heather's questions too, that some programs, they will accept some classes as being kind of crossover classes that will apply towards your master's, and then it also applies towards your like foundational learning in your PhD program. And sometimes it could lessen the program, but sometimes it doesn't. There were programs that I looked into that all it would have done was just gave me less classes I had to take, but not necessarily shorten the length of the program. And so there's that. As we're looking at the program, we're thinking of different options. And so we're exploring what other schools are doing and what would make sense for us, far as the pathway from the master's program into the PhD program. So we don't have that, answer as of yet, but we are exploring what other programs are doing. My program was about 3 years as well. And I finished my research at the end of those 3 years, but sometimes people do the coursework in 3 years and then the research comes after. So it just depends almost and structurally, depending on what the student's needs are and what program you're in. My program also, Heather, to answer your question, was a weekend program. So I went to classes 1 weekend a month. And then I did all my coursework during the month before my classes met on that Friday afternoon. And we would have classes from Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon. And so some are structured that way. I don't know how others were structured.
Yeah, and I think that's an important consideration too, right? Is considering the adult learner, the working student. My program was online with some residencies, weekend residencies, and that allowed me to work as well. What about some of the others on the panel?
Yeah, that was a really big consideration for me as well. I had to be able to work while I was pursuing my doctorate. And so in kind of shopping around for what my interests were, the EDD, the educational doctorate at LMU, EDDs are typically designed for folks that are going to apply what they're learning. I mean, we're all applying what we're learning, but it's about like applied practice. And so they're typically designed with that in mind, so that as an educator is pursuing this higher degree, they can still be teaching. And so that was a really big consideration. And we would have evening classes twice a week, and then we would have summer classes, I believe on Mondays and Thursdays. So it allowed me to continue to work at the community mental health clinic that I was working at, which I needed to do.
Yeah, I'll add to Dr. Joyce's, because I went to the same school, and one of the things that I really loved about the program, how it was designed, it was you kind of had to be really motivated and I think, organized in our program. And you know, our cohort, you could see like those who finished on time and those who just like took years later, but it was, you know, it was 7-week courses, online, right? Really fast, like you could kind of get through courses pretty quickly. We had a residency once a year, and then we had a global experience once a year. So that was a very big component of why I chose that program too, because I knew we would be doing research internationally, and it was not a clinical program. So to add to that, like I did not want to do anything. Like I think how Dr. Jackson was saying, I think I had worked in the clinical world a lot. I had done anything that I could do. And so I was looking for something kind of completely different. And so it wasn't clinical, it was all research based and theory and methodology. And but again, it was very, I think there's certain programs that showing up in person would help some of you, you know, maybe really actually be able to, you know, do the work. I don't think, you know, the online component with, you know, the residencies in person is for everyone either. It was for me, it was perfect. I like wanted to have, like Jess was saying, my life still. I didn't want to give up my life, and I wanted to do the program at the same time. So things to consider.
Okay. Any other questions, or
Can I just comment really quick?
please? Yes.
Just on that note, I feel like a lot of what you all shared is the flexibility around having a full-time work schedule, or a work schedule that the doctorate program worked around. So just as someone who might be interested in LMU's doctoral program in the future of art therapy, I think that would be beneficial if that's something that you guys offered or structured it that way.
Yeah, and as Dr. Jackson mentioned, after this panel, we'll be sending out a survey, kind of based on some of these themes that we're talking about, just to gauge what type of program are you interested in, what components. Okay, are there any other questions? I can move on to the next question. I think I want to start with this.
See, Britt has her hand up.
Oh, Britt.
Dr. Green.
Hi, Britt.
Britt.
Hi, thanks, Jess. I think it's kind of a piggyback question off of what Heather mentioned and what Maru was just talking about, is if, because knowing how rare art therapy doctoral programs are, like if there's been discussion about it being hybrid, and then, because that's something that I would be like very interested in. And then I think that's kind of tied into that with what Maru was saying about not wanting to leave life behind. I was wondering if the panel could talk a little bit for those of you who have families and we're going through this not only with a full-time job, but also balancing kids and like what that might have looked like in your journey as well, because that's definitely something in the forefront of my mind.
Well, I'll start. I did my doctorate when my kids were still in school, so they were in elementary school, and I wanted to wait until they weren't, because I thought about getting a doctorate when I was pregnant, but then decided to wait until they finished at least up to 5th grade, and then that's when I went back. And the hybrid was perfect for me. It allowed me to study and to take care of my kids and work full time because I still needed to support my family as well. But I mean, I didn't sleep for 3 years. So it was kind of like, raising toddlers, babies all over again. I think I must have slept 4 hours a night for 3 years. But hey, who needs sleep? All right. Anybody else? Jessica?
I slept a little bit, but go, Jess.
Well, I was gonna say that I think some of the best advice that my dissertation chair gave me, I was pregnant when I was finishing my doctorate, and very pregnant, and my chair was like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna wait to defend my dissertation until after I have the baby. I'm sure it's fine. And she was like, let's try and get it done. And so I defended my dissertation on Wednesday and had Ramona on Friday. And I was so happy that I gotten it done, because it is a lot. It is a lot to balance all of it. So being mindful of the type of program, like a hybrid or another type of program that allows for a lot of flexibility, because you have two. So that would be an important consideration.
Yeah, I think multitasking, I learned the art of multitasking and reading papers during their, taekwondo practices. And, I kept an iPad with all the articles there, and it was mobile as I studied wherever I had a free time while I was waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to share?
I think mine was a little bit with the kids. I honestly, everything that they're saying, I was over the word, like the sentence, can I have a snack? I'm like, no, I'm doing homework. But I think changing my schedule, honestly. It sounds so silly, but really adapting. So like kid sleeps, I sleep, and they need more sleep. So technically I will wake up 3 hours before that so that I'm an early bird. Dr. Green is a night owl. So I would wake up like 4 or 5 in the morning, and those were like the most peaceful time of my life, really. And I'd be like, whatever I can get done, I can get done. And then the rest is like, they were saying, and just, you piece it together. But it can be done, it can be done. You can have a life, you can have a full-time job, and you can be a full-time student. And hopefully, if there is someone around to help, that is very useful. So that too.
These are great questions. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'll move on to the next. Oh, Christine. Christine Eberly.
Hi. I started typing it, but I think it'll be easier if I ask it in person so it doesn't sound I don't know. So if you do start an art therapy doctorate program, what do you think the benefits are? Art therapy already feels very specialized. What do you think the benefits are versus the pros and cons, I guess, from getting an art therapy? Would it be an art therapy degree through LMU specifically, or are you just talking about a doctorate?
We're exploring a doctorate program.
Okay.
And how that looks, with either a specialization in art therapy. We're still exploring that, and that's where we would love your feedback as well.
So I guess that's my question. The pros and cons of getting a doctorate in art therapy where it already feels very specialized, and like you would use that in your further practice when getting your doctorate. I guess Dr. Jackson could speak to that, the pros, and then versus sort of broadening your scope, but still using art therapy in your everyday research.
Yeah, I would say the pros. I felt like I finally had a grasp of the practice of art therapy. And I feel like I wasn't fighting to find my niche in my degree because it was already laid out for me, right? That was the degree I was learning. So it wasn't like I had to find art therapy in another discipline or under another umbrella. It was the sole focus of why I was there. And so all the talk was familiar, all the practice was familiar, everything that we did in class, it was not another hurdle for me to kind of have to go through. And I think that made my experience much more enjoyable as I went through my doctorate. And I think it also encouraged me to feel like I was, which is what all doctorates do, is add to the collective knowledge of art therapy, right? In the end, I was able to take that focus and add to the literature of art therapy and the scope of art therapy by bringing what I felt was special to me, which was cultural humility, and be able to develop that into something that I could bring to the field of art therapy in a more direct way because it had a linear path for me all the way through. And so I think those were my benefits. Yes, I'm going to share some thoughts from my colleague who's on the call, who went through the master's program with me as well as the doctoral program with me at Notre Dame de Namur University. And her thoughts are, to continue the research that was very limited in the field, right? Because I didn't see myself or see anything culturally relevant being really practiced and taught in art therapy. So having that focus in cultural humility was my contribution to be able to bring something that was not seen in the field. And I think sometimes you don't get a chance to do that without having that doctoral education that gives you the tools to know how to bring that into the field. And so, yeah, thank you for that, Missy.
Yeah, I think that's a great discussion, right? Because the research then that you did was very, very specific to art therapy and broadening or deepening the art therapy practice. And I'm curious from the other panelists, how have you been able to integrate art therapy in your doctoral research, if at all?
I think I can say something to that. So I really love what Dr. Jackson was saying because my program is a PhD clinical psych program, and it feels like every day I'm kind of fighting to not let myself lose that part of my identity that's so important to me of being an art therapist, and really finding advisors, supervisor, professors who would advocate for me to implement that practice in my research, in my clinical work, and be comfortable supervising that also. And so the thought of having an art therapy doctoral program at LMU is wonderful. And I almost wish I waited for this to happen. But I think I kind of just have to find things that's like, for example, my lab innovation in gaming, I'm kind of using gaming, that online environment, as almost like an art therapy thing. Whereas, like, for example, I'm really interested in working in looking at Minecraft as a holding environment, as a transitional environment for adolescents. And so that's me trying so hard to combine my interests and combine art therapy in my research. But again, it's kind of something you have to make that identity really salient for yourself and really fight for that.
Thank you. Darcy?
Yes, my intention too with my PhD was always to continue my training and studies with art therapy. That has always been my first love, and there just weren't any art therapy grad programs, as I said, when I first started out, and so I also had the second love of working with the body for healing that I had developed in a number of ways through the years in terms of training, and in wanting to do the PhD. with this subspecialty in somatic psychology, it was my desire to bring together in kind of a pioneering way, because it hadn't happened yet, the studies and the work and the clinical work of using art therapy with the body. And so the aspect of imagery that emanates from the body and how important both are, the right brain modalities of each, and working with trauma. And so that was kind of where I was going, kind of in the pioneering way of how can I bring together these modalities that feel like they're more potential to them than either one of them on their own. And so I feel like in the protocol that I developed that was for trauma, that brought together working with the body and working with the art, that was what I wanted to do. That was an intention I had setting out in order when I went into this program. But had there been an art therapy grad program to begin with, back when I graduated, I would have pursued that at that time. I was interested in taking my learning further at that point.
Great.
I'm so sorry, my internet has been very unstable all day because of the wind. So if I missed something, I apologize, but I wanted to offer a different perspective about why I specifically did not want an art therapy doctorate. I felt that I really wanted, I was just seeing all of these different, as I was saying earlier, these different systems that were quite broken. And I really wanted to find a way to be able to communicate with these different entities. And I felt that in education, kind of learning the language, so to speak, learning how to kind of communicate with this different system and bring what I had learned about art therapy to this particular field, and learn about how we could integrate for the betterment of, you know, the people that we were serving was really important. But it was really hard because, as Dr. Jackson was saying, you know, in your program, what I'm understanding is that there was people understood, and in my program, I was the art lady, and so I was constantly explaining what art therapy was, and everybody wanted to be in my group project because I could, you know, make a nice poster. And so it was a little bit frustrating in that sense, but I still think very valuable because of that ability to kind of speak one another's language at the end.
So I think that's also a consideration, right? Where is art therapy positioned in a doctoral program? And how much do we have to advocate for it? In my program, same, I think, same as Eva. And I'm not sure if Maru, your experience was the same, but nobody knew anything about art therapy. And so we had to really push for it and try to find mentors who would understand the art-based approaches.
Yeah, I had the similar experience than you, Dr. Green. I think again, why I didn't go to the art therapy route as well, like Jess was saying, is I thought, honestly, like we need to spread the love too. It felt like using the art in other areas. I feel like I would have never gotten the information that I got within my dissertation research if I didn't use the art. And I think showing the people who had no clue what I was trying to do, that was really important, right? And then continuing to publish in different journals that are not in the art therapy, not specific to art therapy, but have art therapy in them, I thought was really important. But I feel like we need both, right? Like, so I hear Dr. Jackson, and I'm like, well, no, but we need that, right? We can't let go of either one. Like, we need both. We need to we need the deepening, right? So that then we can go out. So yeah, there's no right answer, right? It seems like both are incredibly important for our field, no matter what.
Yeah, so that could be a potential challenge, right, in thinking about conceptualizing a doctorate program. How to do the both and. Jack.
Hi there. I have a question for any of the panelists that are involved in kind of building up the program. What's a thing that is just really important to you that you really want to see as like a foundational component of this program? That like when you first heard about it, you're like, oh, I really want it to have this. What was that for you?
Anybody want to answer that in the panel?
Should we all say it at the same time? See if it's the same. No, I'm kidding. Go for it.
Why are we hesitating? Come on, somebody.
I was just trying to allow for someone else to speak first, but no one else will. When I first had been approached to be a part of this collaborative program, and thank you, Jack, this was a really great question, because I didn't really think about it solely in that way. But when I heard it, I thought a little bit of kind of what we're all talking about, right? That the being able to have that art therapy foundational familiarity with a doctoral program, but also the integrated part where it speaks to other disciplines and there's a broadening of expanding art therapy in the same degree, right? That was also really attractive to me, why I thought this is really great instead of us just having solely an art therapy doctorate program. And of course, one of the things I definitely wanted was the cultural humility component, right? To make sure that it spoke to culture and diversity, healing and equity and all of that in the degree, right? That it was not a copy of some of the psychology degrees where things are taught and been taught the same way for decades, right? And something that is new and innovative, but also speaks to things that should have been talked about for decades, like cultural considerations and things that have to deal with community and how you practice and learn and research in that way.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that is, and using Maru's statement of spreading the love, right? I really see art therapy coming out of silos because I always felt like the art therapy field has kind of been in a little bubble. And I would love for a doctoral program that integrates art therapy with other disciplines, perhaps, so that we can spread the love and expand and broaden the reach of art therapy discipline.
Yeah, I think too, just to jump on that wagon, just creating, I was really excited because it was partnering with the School of Education, and I feel like you all probably know how I feel about education by this point. And so I also see it, we were all really excited in one of our first meetings about this integration and spreading the love and creating access and thinking about these different potential routes that would be more holistic. And so that feels really exciting, different holistic ideas of healing.
I want to just add to that too,
Yeah.
Jessica, that sense of and what you've each said, that sense of the integrative aspect of bringing art therapy into so many realms that we haven't yet been able to do is really the pioneering edge that we are on now. And when I think back to when I did my master's, there were only 6 programs in the whole world in for art therapy then. And so we were pretty busy trying to establish art therapy as a viable field and an understood field, and who are we as what is art therapy kind of, and now we're looking at how can we integrate art therapy into all these different avenues. And I think that's just a really beautiful evolution for the field to go.
Great questions. Okay, we have just a little under 20 minutes. Any other questions from from the group? If not, I have a question to ask. Here we go. Okay. In what ways do you see your doctoral education change your clinical, theoretical, practical, or scholarly approach? I think this is a nice segue from what we've been discussing. But what is the impact of your doctoral education in your work?
I'll jump on that because I kind of answered it a little earlier, but again, my doctoral education helped me understand what art therapy was, because I don't think I really got that until I went into my doctoral program. I got how to practice it, but I didn't really quite understand what I was practicing. And you get in 2 years packed in all that theory, all that, all the readings and learning about all the different histories and the practitioners. But then you go out in the field and really what you're doing is just practicing, practicing, practicing. And when I got my doctoral degree, then I was like, oh, this is who that person was, and this is what they contributed, and this is why it matters. And this is how you connect theory in a deeper level using art therapy. I get it now, right? And then I had the opportunity through our program to have wonderful speakers who were foundational people and influential people in art therapy. So I got to have classes taught by them. And so I got to learn a little deeper about their approaches to art therapy. And so I think it changed the way then I practiced afterwards, because I had a deeper understanding of why I was giving these prompts and why it was important to think about the different ways I was offering these prompts and how I sat as a clinician, as an art therapist, and owning that identity and feeling stronger in that identity when I practiced. So that's what I would say for me.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like getting a doctoral degree is a contribution, and it really does ground you in theory, but not only does it ground you because you have to read it and know it in order to make new theories and ideas and approaches. It allows you to make a very unique and special contribution to further and to deepen and to better the field. And that's exciting. That's part of the reason why I wanted to pursue a PhD, is to kind of change things, right? Change things for the better. Anyone else on the panel?
I would say that I think I didn't do the art therapy PhD like Dr. Jackson, but I still felt like it deepened the work, right? So obviously not directly, because they were not teaching me anything related to art therapy, but because I had the foundation of art therapy and the practice and the clinical work, I could start kind of taking the theory, taking the research, and maybe doing the work on my own, right? So I still think it happened. But I had to kind of put it together, obviously. I think it wasn't it maybe, yeah. So I think Dr. Jackson was saying, like there was things that I felt the same, like in our program. I loved it, like in LMU, got it, whatever, but it wasn't until practicing and then doing my kind of higher education that I really understood things. Like I was like, oh, well, I don't know, something kind of clicks. And I can't pinpoint why that even happened in an international psychology program where they never even talked about art therapy, but it does, right? And then maybe it is that deepening and that where you're trying to be like, okay, the both and, which going back to our own doctorate, if we, make this happen, hopefully that's what it is. It's a both and. It's like you go, you get to explore, but then you actually have the support, right? Right there. You're not trying to figure it out on your own.
Yeah. I think that click happens after reading like 10,000 articles.
That's true. Maybe it's just so much, right? Like,
and
yeah.
synthesizing and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think we haven't talked about like age, but for me, I feel like that was a huge component. I think when I went to the program, I graduated at 24, and I don't know. Like I think I was like, sure, I'm a therapist, like fake it till you make it, like Helen used to say. But I think later, again, going back, getting the theory, I was teaching the theory, learning the material. I feel like it was the first time my brain could actually comprehend everything together too. I think I needed personally the time, right? Like and again, some of you might not, some of you might be like, yeah, I could see that, right? Like just have some more experience so that then it can be applicable. I think it depends on what type of student you are and how you learn.
Any other thoughts from the panelists? And then I want to get to Christine's comment in the chat.
I'll be really brief about this, but I want to say another component for me, which was different because I waited 30 years to do my PhD. And so who I was already quite different from who I was when I finished my master's degree, when I started that PhD. And so meeting myself again at that time and going into deep study and research and taking what I had kind of garnered in my clinical life into the PhD was significant for me. I also had, in terms of bringing in the art therapy to the somatic, I had Metzel as my reader for my dissertation. And so that was kind of just a beautiful, beautiful piece in terms of us having a chance to, having her as a sounding board was really, really valuable for me as well in terms of that. So just to mention that piece.
Great. Jessica or Eva? Yep.
Yeah, I was how your doctoral education changed your clinical. Well, in my master's, I started research with Dolores Mission, with the school Dolores Mission, whom a lot of you are familiar with, but it's a Catholic elementary school in East LA, and I did my research there looking at the Summer Arts Workshop, which is a community week-long art therapy-based summer camp for adolescents, where we look at exploring cultural identity. And so that was a really powerful experience for me and really kind of grounded me in this idea that I really wanted to do community-based practice. And so when one of the reasons why I decided to pursue my doctorate at LMU was because it would allow me to continue working with this school. And so I did my dissertation with the same school and got to work with the same kids. And so in that way, I think that it was interesting kind of taking some of the theories of art therapy and then again, integrating those with a lot of the theories that I was learning in education and using that as a lens to really understand the work that I was doing in my doctorate. I think really for me, really kind of expanded my understanding of what I wanted to do. And then also, of course, I love teaching. And so getting a doctorate allowed me to come back and work with students and continue community work through the clinic. So it was a really, really good choice for me.
Eva, anything to add?
I am hesitant to answer this question because I'm a second year in my PhD program, so I don't know if I truly have expanded or that really clicked for me yet, and I'm maybe like 1,000 articles in, so yeah, I don't think I'm the best one to ask.
Just 9,000 more. 9,000 more. The click happens, right?
But how do you see it? I think, even in your second year, right? I think you can start imagining and feel that transformation starting to happen.
I think for me, it's that realization that there are so many things psychologists can do beyond, even with the very specific population they want to work with, beyond just providing clinical work and research, which are both very important to me, but there's so many more opportunities, and seeing that like our professional identity doesn't limit to that of just a clinician, and seeing that like door open and expanding kind of my professional interest is exciting for me.
Okay. So Christine Eberly has a question. Do you think you have to love research to get your PhD? Anybody want to take that question?
I have a quick answer. Sorry, the Louvenia. Mine is you don't have to love it, but you have to really find an appreciation. Like you have to like respect it and appreciate it. You know, maybe it's not love at first sight.
Definitely not love at first sight for me.
You know, but there has to be, I think, you have to believe that there is a reason why research is important to the world. If not, I don't think you'll make it. Personally, that's what I think.
Lavinia.
Yeah, I would say when I came in, I was like, what research? I was like, I haven't read like a research or article in 11 years. Like what? And you want me to write what is APA? I was like I came in totally like it was so the gap between my education, I kind of just lost it. You know, it wasn't I wasn't using it. So I kind of lost it. And then I had to catch it again. And when I caught it again, I actually caught it. Like I felt like, ooh, I'm so invigorated by this, you know, and then I'm reading and I'm talking with my cohort and we're exploring and we're firing off of, you know, we're getting these ideas and it just like you start to understand that research isn't about like just reading the thousands of articles you got to read, but it's actually being able to take something you might have a passion in and be able to learn more about it and contribute to it or dismantle it or, you know, look at an alternate way of using it. It becomes, you know, for me, it just became fascinating. And then I found myself like appreciating research much more. But I didn't come into art therapy wanting to be, I mean, not art therapy, but the PhD to teach. Like I didn't even think of that as being the next step for me. I went into it more just so I could learn more about the field and the practice of art therapy. So again, like some of us talked about, that I could change it in the ways that I saw were necessary, right? And be a disruptor in that way. But I felt like the way to do that was to learn more so that I could contribute more. And so I was looking more towards just how do I take this and bring it into the field and then bringing it back to my practice, and then ended up taking the pathway of teaching.
Yeah, I want to add to that because I grew to love research. And once I started to realize that it started to sharpen my skills to analyze, to assess, to really think outside of the box and imagine. So I began to love the practice of it, the investigation. So yeah, you start seeing the possibilities of the power of research. And then through my program, the International Psychology program, we learned different types of research methodologies. It wasn't limited to quantitative, but the qualitative world just opened up my mind, and then mixed methods. And so I began really understanding the power that research has to change systems and change things for the better. And a lot of that is qualitative, because that's where you get the stories from people who a lot of times aren't heard, right? So.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what you said, Joyce. I think that I grew to love research. Dr. Lanish invited me to co-teach in the research methodologies class years ago, and I was pretty overwhelmed. I didn't quite know what I was going to do. I didn't really feel like I had any real experience, but teaching that class for a number of years and then getting my own doctorate, I think that what you're saying, Joyce, that with qualitative research, it's so exciting and so creative. And there's so many different possibilities. And now when I have like free time, I get my coffee. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to research. And it's like really, really exciting to like go and find things and validating too, to find the certain elements that you're looking for that really kind of justify what you've collected, the data that you've collected. It's fun, if you can believe it.
I will say I hated stats class. It sucked. But it's part of the learning. I much more appreciated the reading and that type of exploration than the mathematical part. But
okay, I know gosh, is it already almost 8 o'clock? This has been such a rich discussion, and thank you so much. I want to leave room for one more question. If anybody has a burning question that they want to ask or bring up. Okay. So Louvenia, what are the next steps? What should is there anything we need to kind of say, or I don't know. How do we end this?
Joyce.
I want to keep going.
I will say, thank you all for being here and the questions that you asked, because I think it helps us to think about how to move forward with this exploration and where we might ultimately land with this doctoral program. And another part of that will come later in a survey. So if you guys get an email from us that says doctoral survey, please open it and fill it out. I promise to not make it painful. And let us know what your thoughts are. We're going to want to know from you. Like now that you've kind of had this conversation with us, what is, you're leaning towards? Is it a PsyD? Is it a PhD? Is it, you want more integration? Are you looking for more art therapy focus? Are you looking for your master's to apply, to not apply? How would you like to see this program? Because I think we want to make this program beneficial, right? And if it's not going to be something that's going to attract anyone to come to, then there's no need for us to do it. So the next steps is please give us as much feedback about this as you possibly want to give us, because we're getting collecting much data as we can so that we have the best program put forth. Everything that we do at LMU is thoughtful. And so we want to make sure that we continue to be that way in this process. It may not be something that's going to come in the next year or two, but it could come a little while after that. So please listen in. And Joyce, I think a good place to end with this is just share a little bit more about what's happening in the Research Institute and things to look forward.
Oh, yes. So I wanted to say, in wrap up, we had a really rich discussion today, and thinking about all the different pathways, thinking about interdisciplinary, how do we advance art therapy, and is there opportunities to take it globally? Is there a way interdisciplinary, and which fields are you interested in order to make those connections? And I think that's the spirit of this doctoral program that we're trying to imagine. But I think also, the fact that you're all here engaging with us, as alumni, we want to continue that. We are going to meet again next month, another faculty talks, and that's open to all alumni and current students. And in May, at the end of May, we will be having a research symposium, and the theme of that, and you'll get a email about it soon. But the theme of that will be on art therapy research, ethnography to empower communities. So I'll be sharing some of the results of the research that I've been doing with the Lao and Korean elders. The data has been analyzed already, and as part of the California Humanities Grant and the LA 2050 grant, we will have a public kind of facing program to share the results. And I'm also going to have a panel of 2 other programs from alumni where they have received some funding to do research in the community with the unhoused, with the mobile unit, and then also another program with former foster youth, and it's the research that they've designed to explore and empower those communities. It's going to be an amazing event, and I really hope that all of you will attend. It's going to be in person on campus, and we're also going to have there our friends from IMPA from Mexico City, who's going to be joining us for their own workshops and program 2 days prior to the symposium. So it's going to be a huge party. So it should be lots of fun. Continue to look for emails from me from the Research Institute for events coming up, for AdArc events. We really want to continue to serve as a vibrant community for alumni and to support your research efforts or projects as they come up. So thanks for being.
I want to thank
Yeah.
Dr. Green for the work that she's doing in the Research Institute and bringing us together tonight. I really appreciate the space and everyone on the panel who came and joined and took the time to share your experiences. Darcy and Eva, it's great to see both of you and hear about your pathways. And thank all of you for being here tonight.
Thank you to the panelists. Thank you, everyone, for your engagement. And I've taken copious notes, and this is also recorded. So we're going to integrate that and put together our survey. So look out for that. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.